Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I'm Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Jonathan Gurney.
This month, we're talking about Graffity's Wall, a story about art, aspirations, and coming of age by Ram V, Anand RK, Aditya Bidikar, Jason Wordy, Irma Navilia, and Yuresh Malap. Now, in case you need a refresher, Graffity's Wall follows four young adults, Suresh, Jay, Chasma, and Syra, as they navigate living and striving on the fringes of Mumbai. As each attempts to achieve their artistic dreams, they must make choices that will define the type of adults they will become. Jana, welcome back.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, no, great to be back. Always love being invited to come on the podcast. I think if anybody is listening that has been invited and they've perhaps been a bit nervous to do it, I would encourage you to. Matt and Patrick do a fantastic job of making you feel very welcome and making it very easy to talk about the book that will be discussed.
I appreciate that plug.
It was unprompted. I
It's
swear.
surprising. I'm surprised.
It's there on the script that you sent me.
Oh shit! Oh no.
No, I always appreciate having you on. The time zone difference, I always have to double check it, and then daylight saving time got me on this one, so I had to triple check it because it was 14 hours difference, and that was only 13. It's been a bit of a week here in America.
Very thoughtless. Yeah, very thoughtless to not to live so far apart, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's true too. I don't know how we fix that given the current reality of the situation, but we should try sometime to fix that.
I think so. Yeah, I think let's let AI have a crack at it and see what it comes up with. But I think in the same way, what would be to bring it to the book is that there are some examples of that kind of thinking in this book, of that kind of thoughtlessness when it comes to the people that perhaps those decisions would affect.
So, Jono, what are you thinking about specifically?
I was like the slums being torn down, right?
Yes, absolutely, Pat. I'm so glad that you picked up on that. So, I don't think it's getting too far ahead of the discussion, but in the very first chapter of this book, we see a bureaucratic decision that essentially strips potentially hundreds or even thousands of people from their homes, simply due to convenience or for land development.
And putting a hotel there, right? Is that
Yeah.
The ending of this comic made me so sad.
Yeah. Yep. What drew you to it, Matt? What was the and Pat, when did you first come across Graffiti's Wall?
So yeah, this is usually actually the part where I ask the guest, hey, what made you want to talk about this book?
Uno reverse.
I made us talk about this book this time. Sort of, at least. You had a 50-50 choice between this and Murder Falcon, which I would love to talk about Murder Falcon sometime too. But
Absolutely.
I decided to send you both those books because I know that getting comics, especially physical comics, can be difficult in Australia, especially outside of the main cities. And so when I wanted to send you a couple books for Christmas last year, I knew I wanted to send you some kind of artistic stuff by up and coming or modern creators that I figured you probably hadn't really seen anything from that I knew I like. And also really wanted to prioritize giving you books that were complete packages in one book. So you don't have to go pick up volume 2 of Graffiti's Wall or Murder Falcon or whatever. You get the book and it's a whole story in the book. So I chose Graffiti's Wall because Ram V is probably one of my favorite current writers going. And this is definitely one of, I don't know if I want to say better books because they're all pretty high quality, but I enjoy this one because it's very much it's kind of a travel piece for those of us who have never been to Mumbai. You really feel like you're living in the city, I feel like, when you're reading this comic and experiencing the city through the eyes of these four teenagers, young adults, whatever. And I thought you would kind of appreciate that that sense of, I don't know, adventure, being spirited to a new place as a fellow traveler. And also it has kind of that bittersweet feeling that I think is also a thing that you've enjoyed in stories before too. So that's kind of what drew me to sending it to you.
Yeah. So first of all fantastic points, and I did receive this comic, and it was such a lovely gift to receive. And so, to put it in the context of when I received this, I'd actually just returned from Zimbabwe. I'd been visiting my family there. I hadn't seen them for about 10 years. I hadn't been home for about 10 years, so I went on a very brief 2 week trip there, and then came back. I was exhausted, mentally, physically, shattered into pieces by just the as you've touched on, the bittersweet feeling of travel and of going to a place that perhaps once was home. And so this receiving this gift and this package, and then getting to read Graffiti's Wall, it was really just the timing of it and everything was couldn't have been better. Um, yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, man, I can't imagine. Like 2 weeks is like not. It's like, I mean, I'm sure it was like a lot of time while you were there, and like it was very impactful, and like you got to do a lot of very cool things and see your family, right? But like it's also like it's such a small amount of time when you haven't been there in 10 years. I'm sure by the end of that trip you were exhausted trying to fit everything in.
That is, yeah, exactly right. And it is. You know, I think we've talked about this about other books, but I think Graffiti's Wall, it's quite relevant to talk about how, particularly in what we've just talked about, the destruction of the slums, is how your attachment to place, or your sense of place, of home, it doesn't necessarily match up with the reality when you return, and the difficulties of I guess trying to superimpose your memories over the new reality of a place is always challenging. And I think that's the one thing that strikes me about Graffiti's Wall is it we see a lot of that in the way people talk. You know, some of the characters' family talk about life and how it has changed them, and how they remember certain things, and how those memories, affect their feelings to each other, was very powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we get that at certain points through the book. Like we get it with Suresh's father, who I think has like one of the most heartbreaking lines in the book, which is I'm scrolling down to get it. Don't dream so much. It's painful to watch. Just like God,
Mhm.
that's such a heartbreaker of a
Mm,
line.
mhm,
But like,
mhm.
you also get it kind of in the epilogue too, right? Like the epilogue, which I don't know, I couldn't find anything about because this is like the quote unquote expanded edition. I've never seen the original edition. This is the edition I found in the library in Minnesota in the first place when I found this book. Like I don't know if the epilogue is new for this edition or not. I know some of the stuff in the back definitely is, but the epilogue talks about kind of just like that sort of feeling you're talking about, Jono, of like having a place and a moment that you can never quite get back to. It's never quite the same. Like those four people, like Jay's on the run, like Chasma has moved to Delhi, I think, and is writing books there, and like doesn't want to talk to Syra because he doesn't want to ruin the like summer that they had together.
Yeah, yeah.
Pat, how'd you like the book?
No, I
That was
liked
going to
it.
be my next question.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I think the major pull for me, obviously, was the art and just the details that were put into it is sort of crazy at times. The amount of
Yeah, like
intricate little
that's what
things.
I really appreciate about this book is just it feels like everyone is pulling in the same direction and it makes something that's greater than any of them could make by themselves. Like, I mean, Kieran Gillen, which apparently we only talk about Kieran Gillen or
I
Kieran
was like,
Gillen
gosh
in
dang it,
books.
Kieran, why are you doing this for
I
this?
completely forgot that he had done the introduction to this when
Can't
I
escape
like was like,
him.
"Oh, we'll do this, blah blah blah." But like he's not wrong also at the introduction when he's talking about like how much like the lettering aids the art. Like the lettering feels like it's a natural extension of the art even though that's two separate people and like I'm not sure who colored what, but like the colors are like they pop so hard and like they do so much to set the atmosphere of the book and like go along with the energy of the art, which is like exploding out of the panels at times or like has really good like four beats on the rap songs. Like there's so much stuff just working in this and it's all working in the same direction too, which I think makes it worth discussing.
Absolutely, the panels, the art seems to move panel to panel, like it feels like you're almost seeing past the panel and into Mumbai, or at least this you're seeing the interpretation of Mumbai, and the coloring and the I mean, I don't know I don't have the language to speak about the art, but it feels kinetic at times. Like it feels like there's real movement happening page to page, and it's really unlike anything I think I've read in the comic space.
Yeah, kinetic is actually the word I lean on a lot for describing like this like style or like yeah, I guess style is right, where like you can kind of feel the motion from panel to panel to page. Like I also sometimes feel like I don't quite have the language when I'm writing like the blog posts for the blog too, and when I find something like this, like I'm looking right now at Suresh shaking that graffiti can for the first time and the rattle rattle there, and like I would definitely lean on the word kinetic for that also. But I just
Mhm.
it also feels kind of it's like both tight and expansive, which I think is a really nice way to convey a city feeling. Like the panel borders kind of keep it tight, but the panels themselves have like bustling and energy and stuff. So I think that's a really good way to represent a city also because it is demarcated by borders and streets and blah blah blah, but it's full of activity
And walls, lots of walls,
and walls, yeah.
both physical and metaphorical.
Societal, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and an interesting kind of theme throughout as well. Is that it's not just although the eponymous character's wall is very important to the story, but more as I feel like a framing device than any kind of I think the walls that we see in other parts of the story are equally threatening and equally important. Pat, if I can return to your question though, what made you choose this one over Murder Falcon? Because I think we were sort of umming and ahhing between those two,
Yeah,
and I think it was
I
a
let Pat
fantastic
decide
choice. Yeah.
actually.
Oh, I was deciding that. Oh man. I mean, at the time when I was reviewing both of them, I guess just the tone and just the beauty of the art of Graffiti's Wall drew me in more than the brash nature of Murder Falcon.
Which is, I think, exactly what I expected when I gave you the choice, honestly. I was like, I'm going to give Pat this choice. He's going to say that both look good, but he wants to do Graffiti's Wall, which is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Um, and exactly kind of what I expected. And I don't, like, I think for the three of us, I don't know. I mean, we'd have a good time discussing Murder Falcon too, but, like,
Yeah.
I think it's probably the right choice. I don't know.
100% agree. No. I think I mean we would have had an equally good time discussing Murder Falcon, no doubt. But I think this is how to put it. This is very much like the media studies art house film where you can say so much about mise en scène and you can say so much about setting and tone and characterization and things like that. And there's so much in the just in the posing of people and in the framing of certain panels and all of that sort of stuff that we could probably spend hours just dissecting one chapter of this book. And I think that makes it just such an excellent choice for this.
Yeah, I had a similar thing written in my notes actually, where it very much feels like you went to a film festival and you saw like a very good like indie film that someone made, and you walk out of it and you have so much that you kind of like want to unpack and discuss. And like, it's not, I don't know, it's not like a revolutionary story, right? Like it's a
No.
kids run into
Definitely, yeah.
problems while trying to achieve their artistic dreams story, and like that's been done, but like it's done very well, and it's like
Yeah, I would agree.
Mm,
I think that's the only detriment I would give it is that the story, while conveyed uniquely, is one that I've read or watched previously for sure that have
yeah,
similar, even like the time with like a drug connection and stealing money from the drug lord
yeah.
and the
yeah,
repercussions of that
And again,
had
I
yeah.
think
similar
The
tones. Yeah.
it's
yeah.
definitely like the exceptional execution that pushes it over the line to me into like a book that I am happy that I've read twice and will probably read again at some point. Like I actually checked out another copy from the library here and I'm like, I really need to just buy this goddamn book for myself.
The
Gotta put it
digital
on the
copy is
shelf.
not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine. Yeah, the colors are probably great on a screen, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think this is not a unique story or a new story, but I guess no story. It's very rare to find a story that's entirely new, um, and that's where having the execution that Graffiti's World has, the confidence with which it tells its story, and the way in which the art works with it is where it's really strong. I think for people listening, this is essentially a coming of age story. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Where each chapter we're sort of introduced to, or not necessarily introduced, but we see more of Mumbai through the eyes of another character. So in chapter one, we have Graffiti or Suresh, and we see the world in which he and his friends inhabit. And then in chapter two, we sort of explore the seedier side of that with Jayesh, who's Jay, who's who's kind of playing off between working for a drug lord and trying to achieve his own dreams, but also while protecting his grandmother, I believe. And then in chapter three, which I think was my favorite chapter, and I'd be really interested to hear your favorites, we've got Chasma, who's come to Mumbai to study, but he's also he seems to be searching for more than that. And then in chapter four, kind of there's the chapter four. I'll cover chapter four later. I think we'll all talk about it in much more detail. But that's sort of the where the incident that is the narrative conclusion, so to speak, happens, and then we get the epilogue.
Yeah, chapter 4 is weird to me in that, like, it's Graffiti's chapter again, right? Like, from narration at least, like, and a decent amount of it's about Chasma, and, like, it's kind of supposed to be quote unquote Cyro's chapter. So, like, that one's
Mm,
weird to me. Like, I understand why it is the way it is, but at the same time, I wonder if, like, there's another version of that existed at some point that was like more Cyro's chapter where we actually follow her in the same way like we follow Jay through like his entire day during his chapter, right? And like same thing with Graffiti and like more
absolutely.
time passes in the fourth chapter, so like you can't really do that maybe. I don't know. Like it's interesting. It's an interesting choice. I don't want to like go further than that, I guess. I don't want to say it's like a I'm wondering whether it does a disservice to her character, I guess, to not have a quote unquote chapter to herself. But I don't think it does. I think it's fine. I was wondering if you
Well,
guys were
Sayra is an
thinking about
interesting
that.
character because she pops up in every chapter, doesn't she? Does she? Does she pop up in chapter one?
I don't think she
I
pops
know
up in
she
chapter
pops up.
2 actually. Or no, she
I
is
thought
in
she was in
chapter 2.
chapter
She's not in
two
chapter
when
1. You're right. Yeah, you're
yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
yeah. And it's I do agree with you. I would have enjoyed a chapter seeing Mumbai in Cyrus' experience, and potentially then having a chapter five that kind of tied chapters one through four together in the way that chapter four currently does.
Yeah, that's
But
sort of would be more I don't know, like structure like parallel structurally correct, I feel like. I don't know that it needs it, but it felt a little like it felt weird a little bit.
yeah,
And I guess while we're talking about the story like being quote unquote nothing new, I think it is worth mentioning that like in American comics especially for like the comic to be set in Mumbai and talking about like the lived experience of Indian people is like worth like that's not a thing that happens all the time, and it's something that I was reading various essays about the comic, either like reviews or interviews with Ramvi, and a critic that Cal and I both read fairly frequently, Ritesh Babu, and again I might have killed that name and I apologize, basically wrote an essay that was a lot of just like how much it felt like how gratified they felt just to be seen and like for their like for to see themselves in a comic. So I guess I don't want to like discount that too when we're saying like it's nothing new. Like for some people it's something they've been waiting a while for, and like yes, it's the same story, but the approach and the specifics really matter. So it's worth pointing that out too,
Sure.
I guess.
Definitely. And I think we would be doing a disservice to not speak about the fifth character, which is Mumbai. Like Mumbai is so much of the story. The life and bustle that we see in every panel, it makes you want to visit Mumbai. It makes you feel like there is this melting pot of culture and community and things like that. And it really was a fantastic setting for the story. Like I think even if you'd had the same quality of art and writing and everything, and you had it set in just your typical an Australian city or an American city, I don't think it would have the impact that
Yeah, definitely
Mumbai
wouldn't be the
has.
same.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes from at least part of the creative team having lived and been there for a large portion of their life or lives
Mm,
also. The
mm.
first 2 pages, like, the establishing shots of the city and, like, the specific pieces chosen to show us, like, "Hey, this is what this city is like." It's like, "Here's the subway, here's this cathedral with the scaffolding on it for construction or renovations, the weird little motorbike with milk cans rattling," like, the one I actually really like the most, I think, is the, like, kind of dramatic sunlight lighting on the oh god, those streets. There's so many places you go and you drive and you're just like, "I don't understand how people don't die here every
Yeah.
day," and this feels like it would be one. Korea was less so like that, but every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 2 opening pages really, again, know what they're doing, and, like, they're such a great establishing shot of the city that we're then, like, dropped into and we see various corners of through our characters' eyes.
Even when you get to Chasma's thing and you get to see the university looks just so beautiful. Almost an anachronism in the busyness of the Mumbai streets, if that makes sense. Like this sort of
Yeah, kinda like,
almost.
quote,
Well,
unquote,
I mean, it's
"classical structure."
precisely. And also, but I think I liked that. Ravi and the team, they obviously didn't shy away of showing that, just because it's this melting pot and this cultural, this amazing city, that doesn't mean that there isn't still a feeling of being othered. Because I think Chasma certainly faces that, in that, he feels very, because of his racial heritage, he's othered in the city of Mumbai by people. And I think, it's a very interesting kind of dynamic, because I think it's a very Western sort of thing to be like, oh well, everybody is always welcome until they come to America or till they come to Australia. And it's like, oh, actually, other cities have their own tensions when it comes to stuff like that. And it's very interesting to see that explored.
Yeah, I think in one of the interviews I read, Rambi was talking about how there is just like this sort of, and I might not get this exactly right, but I'll link to the interview too. But like there is this sort of like you were describing, Jono, like a tension between Indian people and like Chinese people that have lived in India for like a very long, like there's a long history of this. Like it's not like a
Mhm.
I don't know, it's not like an uncommon thing, but like especially I don't know if it's especially recently, but like it's a thing where like those tensions that have come to a head in a way we see in Chasma's chapter here a little bit, and also there's a section in Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which is also set in Mumbai and by Ramvi, where like those tensions are sort of tackled head on a little bit, and it's like again something that you might not expect to see in a book where you're visiting a new place. Like I think feel like a lot of times people who want to show off the city they live in want to only show off the good parts too. Maybe not writers so
Mhm.
much because writers kind of observe things and like see good and bad and want to tell you about all of it, but I feel like very often people are like, "Oh, look, this city is great." Like if you see it in a movie or something, you're like, "Oh, oh, cool. What a fun
Yeah.
city."
We don't expect to see the immigrant experience that we've sort of seen in other films in Western media to be sort of to have the immigrant experience to be actually be quite similar in a place like Mumbai. I guess we
Yeah.
would expect that there'd be more tolerance or acceptance, and it's like, oh, actually, those tensions exist everywhere in the world. They might be handled slightly differently, and they might appear differently, but ultimately, um, that's something that everybody grapples with
People are
wherever they go
people,
in the
yeah.
world.
So, Jono, you said you gravitated towards Chasma's chapter being your favorite.
I see what you did there, Matt.
We do this once a month, and we've been doing it for years. So every once in a while, I get a good one.
Look, yes, I did. I thought. I mean, it's probably the one that I've written the most about in my notes. And that's not to say I certainly didn't enjoy chapters 1 and 2, or even chapter 3. Chasma just had a little bit more optimism. I think, even though he was facing a lot of tension and things like that, he still, he's still. There's a great line. What does he say? I am a part of the taste of Mumbai, when he talks about, and that's obviously relating to a conversation he has with somebody at his job, about, what was it, the American chop suey?
American
Is that
chop
what he
suey,
calls it?
yeah. Which I really like that page where he's
Yeah,
taught. Like, I think that's a great description of how cities function, actually.
yeah, exactly. And I think Chasma's unwillingness to, what does he say? I look at rejection in both as evidence of effort. Um,
Which is such a writer thing to say.
yeah, but I think, I think of the artists that we're presented with in the book, because each character is an artist,
Yep.
in their own right. Like, Graffiti, or Suresh, he obviously is a graffiti artist, and an amazing one. Uh, Jay wants to be a rapper, and I think he obviously has the. I think he's got the experience and, unfortunately, the pain and perhaps the talent that he could transmute that into, a very successful career. Um, Chasma wants to be a writer, and Sayra wants to be an actress or an actor. But I think Chasma is the one who perhaps realizes that ultimately, once you've handed your art off to somebody, so once he's given somebody a letter that he's written, he no longer has control of that art. It becomes, what they do with it is no longer his responsibility, if that makes sense. So he can't control it, and he understands the ephemeral nature of it. And I thought that was quite powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think Graffiti at least might understand that too, with the line about you can paint over it, but you can't unsee it. Like, the fact that you've sort of, I don't know, altered someone's outlook on life at least somewhat, somehow, via your art.
Oh,
Like, it's a similar
yeah, I
thought
think
at
that's very
least.
true. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think they're like, I mean, definitely we're told that Chasma is the most optimistic one, even though he's actually like one of the ones who's gonna bail on the city for a little bit there.
but sometimes that's the healthy way to deal with something, right? Is to remove yourself from the situation. I think
Yeah.
that's sort of, the yeah, like accepting that you can't change it, and so perhaps the best way is to give yourself some distance.
Yep. Have done it. Have been on both
Yeah,
sides of that
yeah.
one. And yeah, it's like it's interesting as like because he does eventually succeed, so that's nice, right? But
Yeah, absolutely. But the J, we don't know. Um, and Syra, maybe.
kind of like was in a
Maybe.
commercial
Yeah.
once at least. Seems
Maybe
like
was in a
no,
commercial. Yeah.
honestly. So that's I mean that's a 50% success rate assuming Graffiti is like teaching about art at the end, which is kind of what I assumed was happening there.
Yeah, I think so.
I, yeah, I would agree.
50%'s not bad, I guess. Jay's who knows where Jay is though.
Yeah, because Jay, I guess, yeah, Mario, just Jay's boss, just straight up seems like an evil guy. Like, I
Yes.
don't see anything redeeming about
There
Mario.
are like I was trying to decide this today. I was thinking about this like are there good adults in this book? There's Jay's grandma, kind
Yeah.
of, and
Mhm.
maybe there's Graffiti's mom, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't even know
I
if
don't.
I
And
would.
I don't know that his dad was a
Um,
bad person.
and the chef at
told you to
Dragon Walk.
Yes.
give up on your dreams, kid. Is what his dad said to him.
I don't think that he was saying that because he didn't think that his son had talent. I think he was more just concerned that, and as the book goes on, perhaps rightly so, is that
I mean,
sometimes the sorry, carry on.
didn't the dad say that he came to Mumbai with a dream and it was
Yeah,
crushed
he
out
was
of him?
also like a failed artist, right? Was
So I think it was
he?
Yeah.
harsh, but I think it probably came from a place that he didn't want to see the same. Like
Yeah.
it destroyed him, and he doesn't want to see his son, who obviously has some talents, also get crushed by Mumbai.
He says nothing is made here in this place, not anymore. Everything is manufactured. Everything is bought and sold. You understand? And I guess that's a warning about the nature of creativity as well.
I don't think and what he did was pretty rough, but I think he did it out of concern for his son.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it's more like a. I'm trying to think of the right word. Like
Though
a
at the end, he does sort of
transition thing.
blame Graffiti by saying, "We all have to
Yeah,
make sacrifices,
make
especially
sacrifices,
if you
especially
have
with kids,
kids."
right? Like
Yeah.
he's
That was
forcing
that was a
Yeah.
little much.
he's forcing his experience onto his kid and saying, "Hey, you aren't gonna make it. I didn't make it," and that sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That just plain sucks. That's no good.
Yeah.
Like there aren't other like so there's him, there's Mario who like
Straight up evil guy. Like
yeah
Mario is almost a cartoon villain in this book, and I don't mean that to be reductive about the characterization. I think that they make him feel very threatening, right up until he's not. But yeah, straight up cartoon villain.
yeah I think he's supposed to be that
Mm.
over the top and threatening for reasons like to carry that central conflict at the end of the story.
Yai, the chef at Dragon Walk, is nice. He's the American chop suey guy.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair.
I
Yeah,
think
see, I was,
Charisma
I
has
was
friends at his work.
I was like, I'm sure this is not the correct read, but I could only think of bad ones this morning.
The police definitely quite bad in the book.
Yeah.
At least the ones that we see.
Well, we see the same, well, mostly the same guy over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, can be bribed and then reverse bribed. As like no integrity within even not having integrity.
What about Kenny, the dishwasher at Dragon Walk? Chasma gives
Yep.
him a letter, and he
Get a
doesn't
letter.
mock him or anything. Yeah.
You're too quick to judge, Matt.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who you would describe as a success?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you interpret. I don't know. I'm just like, is there?
Like at the end of the story? I thought we already said that we thought Graffiti
I guess two of them do make it, but no. I'm talking within the story, like the adults. Like the adults all feel like they have weird, kinda not quite fulfilling, semi-broken lives. I don't know. Which I mean, maybe that's
even
they're living in the slums of Mumbai. I mean,
yes.
I think life has beaten them down.
They have compromised on their dreams. Yeah.
So
Even
I guess.
Even the very rich person that Jay goes to interview for a car washing job.
Oh, geez,
it seems like his version of success is looking down on people that have less than him.
Yeah, definitely, right? Like, and I don't know if that's I should have done more research before we started. I don't know if that's a straight up caste thing at this point, or if it's just a class thing, but definitely like a.
I would say class more than caste. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would think so.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely a good point. Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're lucky that you get to wash my car, kid. Like,
Personally, I've been told that the kids at DeMello Chol are all lazy and are thieves. Which is what a lovely way to
right? Like, what a job interview. I know you're lazy and a thief, but we could try it. You could put a washcloth on my car, which is like the easiest thing in the world. I don't know. And then, like, I really liked that Jay just gave the guy the finger and walked out in that scene. I really enjoyed that scene from a even while knowing that at the same time that means that Jay's gonna continue dealing drugs. I was like, I guess go deal those drugs, kid, because this you don't want to deal with this.
Yeah. So Matt, I guess the message that Matt is giving out there is that
deal drugs.
dealing drugs
Please
is
go deal drugs.
preferable to. But to return to the question of success, I think in their own way, there's 100% success rate for our characters, right? Even even if we don't
Sort
know
of,
that
yeah.
Jay, yeah,
Or at least
because Jay,
75%. Let's say
no,
75. I'm
I
not
would
sure we can give
I
it to
would
Syra.
say I would because I think accepting that you can't change something and that the answer is not to keep trying in a situation that won't work,
Yeah,
and
choosing
instead
to leave
is to
rather than go to another
yeah,
creepy Mario party or whatever. Yeah.
Mario Party.
100%. Yeah. Um, yeah, Nintendo would not support those kind of Mario
They're gonna
parties, I
steal your
suspect.
stars. It's a trap.
Nintendo's not into those sorts of Mario parties. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I guess if that's our, yeah, I'll give it to you. 100% success rate. In that
Yeah,
our
because growing
characters
up,
at least mostly stay true to themselves, which it feels like a lot of the
yeah,
people that they encounter in this book either don't or they're shitty and they do. Like, and there I'm thinking about Mario, I'm thinking about the cop, I'm thinking about the rich guy.
hmm and I think Jay's success is that in chapter 4 he stands up to Mario, protects his
True.
friends. He doesn't let Mario push him around anymore. And I think that for Jay is just as affirming. I mean, yes, he might be on the run, but he's not. He hasn't compromised so much that he'll just let Mario murder his friends.
Yeah, he didn't get his friends killed.
Yeah,
What about his grandmother?
she has a great line as well. But I see the same sparkle in your eye. I fear that you reach for the stars while the ground beneath your feet turns to sand.
Mhm.
But not wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean,
She
yeah,
knew what's up.
she knew exactly what was happening with Jay.
I know that you're hiding money in that canister. You think I
Yeah.
can't reach?
Yeah, that was a good one actually. We've got stools in the house. Come on, man. There's chairs in here.
Guys, I'm really sorry. My dog is howling in the background. I don't know if it can be
Can't
heard.
hear it. Nope.
Okay, that's good. She's like an air raid siren.
I hear a little bit, but it's fine. It adds an ambiance.
People love dogs, so any dog content
Yes.
that we get on the podcast is probably bonus
Only
points.
Wailing
benefit.
like
Yeah.
wailing like a banshee. Yeah, very very dog. Very much dog. Yeah. Um. So let's talk about the one thing that I guess we've alluded to, but there is a pun in the title of this book that is actually incredibly. Sorry, is it getting worse? I think she's just stopped.
Oh no, it's okay. Don't worry.
I did hear
It
it for
makes
the
me
first time
laugh.
just
Just
now.
makes me laugh.
Again, all dog content is good content.
I'm sorry. There's a pun. Yes.
Yeah, well, there's a pun that I think that made this book potentially made it feel very real to me, certainly, and I would be very interested to hear your perspectives on this particular experience. But obviously, the pun of graffiti or gravity,
Mm.
and I think we see in the book is that there's this intense gravity that draws friends together. As the summer goes on, we see that gravity like get stronger and stronger as even as it weakens for other connections in their life. Like we see Jay pulling away from his family and potentially from opportunities that he has, and the same with Suresh, and the same with Chasma and Saira. Even the gravity that was keeping her with Mario weakens and it intensifies as these four form this kind of nucleus. And then there's the event in chapter 4 that sort of the critical mass has been reached and the event happens and it blows them apart, and the gravity cannot recapture them. They never see each other again. And I think that in terms of a coming of age experience, that felt very real to me, for the reason that when I was when we first met, actually, Matt, that summer, that semester in Australia, in Murdoch, where that was where I met you, Kat, Brittany, Andy, Sherry, Josh, Callum, Cato, all of these people, and we were pulled together and there was, this just absolutely amazing time. And then, it wasn't that the gravity weakened, but in many ways it had to, because there was only a finite amount of time that something like that could happen, and then, again, apart to different parts of the world. And that there's that sensation of time running out. I don't know if that's a fair way of describing it, but like, in that particular age, you feel like you've got this unbound potential within you, and you only have a finite amount of time to figure out where you're actually going to put that effort, and then you blink and suddenly it's been more than 10 years since then.
Yeah,
And
roughly
the world has
15.
changed significantly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know, have you guys had that similar experience?
I was actually thinking along similar lines about that sort of like summer in Australia too. Like that's definitely one of those moments for me where everything kind of coalesced. You meet a whole bunch of new people all at once, and like some of them stick, and there's like a glue between you, and like you become a group, and you do a bunch of cool things together, make some cool shit here and there too. And then like you said, it wasn't really. It kind of did feel like time running out because like there's like a hard deadline on it, right? Like most of us were like
Mhm,
going back to America that had come there to study abroad, at least from Eau Claire.
mhm,
And so yeah, it was one of those bittersweet moments in sort of the same way of like it's unrecapturable in a way. Like whenever we all see each other again, like it's great, it's wonderful, it's almost
mhm,
as good
mhm.
as seeing each other for the first time. But like the actual first bit where, especially with like the youthful optimism and energy, and like that was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane was to go to Australia, which my wife
Wow.
Kat gives me shit about all the time. um, so like yeah, there was like it feels like one of those magical moments in like the same way that this book kind of does in a way, although this one's a little bit more bittersweet. I didn't deal any drugs in Australia, I promise.
That you know of,
Um,
yeah.
that I know of, yeah. Who knows? But yeah, that's definitely one for me. I've had others too, like a lot of my time at Eau Claire also the same way. I think Pat
Mm.
probably feels the same. There was the summer that Pat and Mike and I, or no, there was a year that Pat and Mike and I lived together in Madison too, and I think that's got a similar sort of energy to it.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
Pat,
Is my time. I don't know.
yes,
I guess just stereotypically like the high school experience, right? You build up people you've been if you've lived in the same place all your life. You've been with these people for 12 plus years, right? Like you see them more than you see your family. Like it's crazy.
yeah,
And then
Yeah.
after graduating, some of them you'll never see again. I think lots of people go through that, right? It's just the high school experience.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was just talking to our friend Melissa, Pat, like
Yeah.
via text message today, because Melissa's having a kid with her wife. Um,
That's
go them,
fantastic.
go
Oh,
them.
congratulations, Melissa.
But like, I had sent some books because they're having a baby shower, so I just sent some books over, like some kids' books, and was like talking to Melissa. And I think it's the first time I've talked to Melissa in it must be months. And
Right?
like, I used to talk to Melissa every day.
Yeah. Like theater was such a big part of my high school experience, and that really like knits you really tight. Theater kids, it's a trope for a reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, after graduating, most, if not all of those, like if you don't stay on it, they certainly go by fast.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
people under or don't talk to you about. I feel I've got a whole series of like things that people don't talk to you about that they should when you're younger, and this is one of them actually. Like how much effort it takes to
Maintenance.
maintain
Yeah.
friendships.
Yeah,
Like yeah, like
definitely.
there's definitely stuff you have to put into it. Like it's part of the reason we do the podcast at all is
Mhm.
because we started Battlestar Bros kind of because I was moving to California and I wanted to make sure I had
Yep.
a reason to like check in with
Mhm.
you, Pat, and Mike regularly. And so we did the Battlestar Bros thing. And I was like, okay, well, we ended that. I'd still like to do something. They're still over here often, wherever, like I'd like to do
Yeah.
something, and I'd like to maybe even bring more people in. So like we started doing this. Yeah, maintenance of friendships is just like people underestimate it a lot, I think. Like it takes a decent amount of work if you're not literally like down the street from each other or whatever.
For sure. But I mean, and people have their own lives that start like they have relationships and then kids.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
mean, we
like
talked about kids earlier in the book, the sacrifices you must make.
the time you have to spend with your friends is just you don't have it. So it's harder to
I mean, for a few years, I actually was not allowed to leave Australia. Like
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
not. I had a visa that prevented me from being like I had to get special dispensation to go to my own wedding in South Africa, and even that was kind of like I think that was a $200 application,
I'm gonna say I
and
remember that being slightly
there was
tenuous
like a
also.
risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was hugely like I had to go to court. It was a whole thing.
Ugh.
But like and so that that experience was that there was all these amazing events happening for friends, and I couldn't go to them. And like that's another thing of like that gravity, that weakening gravity. When there's external factors, it really accelerates that feeling of being like you still pay attention to your friends' lives, but it's very hard to be part of them when you've got that. And I think Pat, what you said about you just drift apart is as that gravity weakens, everybody has their own orbit, and
Mhm.
it's a great deal of effort to make sure that your orbits still intersect, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I will say that initially I thought the Kieran Gillen introduction read of Graffiti being gravity was like, oh, that's probably not intentional. But then I read an interview with Ron B where he was like, yes, that was very intentional, so I'm the idiot. Jono and Kieran are intelligent and wonderful people, and I'm a dummy. Definitely intentional. I also kind of wanted to talk about, and this is sort of on a similar vein, like, do you guys have a wall in your life? Not like in a blockage way, but in like a place that you go to either to like think by yourself in sort of the way Chasma would go there and like write, or like to gather with your friends. Like, do you have a spot like that?
I mean, I
Uh,
certainly
hmm.
do, but I'd love to hear Pat's.
Oh no, I was about to say I don't really. So
I was gonna
I'd
say
love to
Pat
hear
was
yours.
doing the I'm thinking about it and I don't tone of voice, I think.
Yeah.
So for me, one thing that I do love is so growing up, where we lived, where our house still is, in fact, in Harare, in Zimbabwe, was in Greystone Park. And Greystone Park had a nature reserve that was run by the Courtauld Trust. And it's still there, still exists, much to my delight when I went back. But it is essentially this beautiful nature park where you could just go for a walk. It's sort of slap bang in the middle of the suburbs. I think in America it would just be like a park, but we didn't really have such things. So it was this beautiful nature reserve, and I would go there as a child. I would walk the dog there. I would go there when I went through some very difficult times in high school and things like that. I would go there as well, and it was my sort of place to get away from everything. It was it was where I felt most connected to place. And so when we moved to Australia, I think the village kind of filled that void for me because there was so much to see and do around Murdoch. And when Kato and I were living together in, just down the road from Murdoch, it was still a very similar kind of experience. There were still lots of nature areas for me. And since moving to Albany, we've got Lake Seppings, which is where I regularly love to go for walks when I'm, sort of thinking about things, or it is nice exercise, but it's also just a fantastic place I find to just get out of my head, and just to appreciate things when not when anything too drastic, but just when you just need a bit of a break from things. That's
Yeah.
definitely my favorite.
Oh,
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to be by yourself and think about stuff for a little bit, right? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
the one I was thinking of is also kind of like a natural spot too. Um, when I was in college, there's like you'd go down the hill from the dorms. The dorms are at the top of this big hill. You would make like an immediate like left turn back around the back of the hill, and there was like a nature trail there, and you could like pop off the trail a little bit, and there was like a nice little overlook over the Eau Claire River that no one else really seemed to ever find or use. You had to like hop a fence and then go down a little hill to get there. And I would just like sit there between classes sometimes and either read stuff or just like sit and think. Similar sort of deal.
I love that. Yeah. Pat, now that you've had a chance to think about it, is there a place that you like to visit or go that gives you a little bit of a break from things? Your wall, so to speak?
Not especially. I sometimes reread books that I've enjoyed. It's sort of like coming back to a familiar space mentally, as opposed
think
to
that
going
I
to
like that. There's sort
location.
of almost a memory palace kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. So, is there a book that you would do you want to share, or is that something that's it's a little bit personal? The kind of the particular books that you like for those moments.
No, it's okay. Wizard of Earthsea, Ursula Le Guin is a good one that I usually go back to and reread every once in a while.
Always nice to have that sort of comfort literature.
For sure.
Wouldn't know anything about that. Stares at shelves of Batman comics.
I actually, that's that probably not quite on the theme of what we've discussed, but I recently gave away my Spider-Man comics because I've been trying to make some space on the bookshelves, and I had 14 Ultimate Comic Spider-Man books, from when it started to quite far into the Miles Morales run. And yeah, just cleared that out and gave it to a friend's son, and he apparently read all of them in like a day.
Ah,
Oh,
that's
nice.
great.
Yeah, yeah. But it was nice to be able to kind of hand that over and be like, I know that this is good media. This is this is something that once meant
First
something
taste
quite a
is
bit to me.
free.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah.
It
But
is a
that's
really
that
nice.
used to be my sort of comfort literature. Definitely was those the Spider-Man stories.
I mean, another
still
one
love it,
is Dune. I've read Dune probably
Ah,
4 times now.
I can't believe that
such
that's
a
your
great book.
comfort literature.
It's so good, Matt. The world
It
building
really
is
is great.
so good.
It's been
And I am
I
what?
so
100%
pissed at
support
what
it.
they're doing with the movie. I am so
Yeah,
upset.
we have a whole separate conversation about that.
Uh,
The summary version of which is, I think it's been how many years? Like close to 10 at this point, and I think Mike Drew still hasn't read Dune once. So there's that.
Ah,
Um,
definitely need to do a podcast where we just read June once a month
Dune
and
is
then we
so
talk about it.
good.
Yeah.
maybe we
Now
read
here's a
like
question
one
for you,
chapter of
Pat.
Dune.
Pat,
No, we don't look every time.
Sci-Fi Channel did a
The
mini series,
miniseries is
Oh
the
yeah,
best
we've
adaptation.
seen
Children
the
of Dune.
It's
miniseries.
It
so
is
good.
incredible. Oh my god, I'm so glad to hear somebody else say that. I used to feel like the miniseries was a fever dream that I'd had. But it
No,
is
I'm with
legitimately
you.
one of the best adaptations I've seen.
It's so good. The
So
movies
They
are
had
doing it so wrong.
James McAvoy
As the son, yeah,
as the
Paul's
son, and
son.
he was
Can't remember his name.
incredible. Yeah, he was
Yep.
fantastic.
Yeah, the
Leto,
first
that's right, Leto
miniseries too.
Atreides. Yeah,
Yes, right.
yeah, yeah. No, that was such a good one. Yeah, June is a great choice for that kind of, I guess, that wall that you can return to, and as the world and news around you, that it does change how you view the book. It really is, yeah.
There is certainly a lot to unpack in a Dune, that's for sure.
Heck yeah.
Do we feel that there was? Do you feel like there was? Because I think we've kind of not criticized the book by saying it's the story is familiar, because I don't think that's a criticism. But were there points in the book that you didn't like? Was there bits that stuck out where you were like, on the whole, I didn't like this part, and I didn't like that part.
The abrupt ending for me was that it was very abrupt.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
the gun goes off, there's a spray of red. We see that it isn't one of the kids that got shot, but a spray can. And then it just cuts.
Mhm.
Like Mario still has a gun.
Did Jake
Oh,
kill Mario?
he's
Is that
dead.
why he's on the
dude's
run?
dead. That dude's
He
super
killed
dead.
Mario, you think? Okay.
Pretty
That was what I took away. Yeah.
He couldn't
I
have possibly
definitely-
stuck around after how he'd stopped Mario.
Yeah, I'm
Didn't
like
say anything
Yeah.
about.
99% sure that he's
Stopped
dead.
quite permanently. Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, I don't know. It just ends, and all of a sudden it's an epilogue, and we find out that everyone went their separate ways, which is fine. But it was very like we built up these characters, and all of a sudden it's just like, and here we are, and it's not great for most of us. But what are you going to do? Also, the wall has been bought and used by the filthy rich for decorating their lobbies, and the public no longer gets to see the art that was made.
I
But I mean,
think
at
that
least the
that
art
is perhaps the
survives.
most
There's
pointed
something.
truth about it. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, because I think
compromised,
that
but
is
it's
the
there.
experience of
I think I would rather
It's-
it not exist than be used as a pretty thing in the lobby. You know, that just seems like.
But I think
know.
that's very true to the art experience, right?
Sure.
It becomes a
Commodifying.
luxury and
Yeah.
commodified. Yeah.
I mean, we were even talking about before, like, Chasma's acceptance of the fact that you make the art and you send it off into the world and you don't really get to have control of it anymore after that, right? Like, we made the wall, we sent it off into the world, and now it's part of this luxury hotel. Which,
Yeah.
again, I'm kind of like, at least they didn't just knock it down. That's something.
I guess.
We create
I
because we
think your
must, but we
feelings are
cannot
valid, though,
control
Pat.
once we've done it.
It made me
Yeah.
very sad. It was a very sad ending for me.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be one thing if Suresh knew that his art still existed. He doesn't even know. He assumes
I
it's
kind of
gone.
like that, actually, that he assumes it's gone.
All right.
But also that it doesn't really matter to him if it does or doesn't exist anymore, right? Because that was a completed work.
Sure.
Yeah, he
Like
made it.
again,
It
he'd
happened.
put that out and that's done. Yeah.
I don't know. It was an
Yeah.
interesting, like the last scene that we see. It's an interesting shot that the wall that encapsulated everything in the book is now in this luxury hotel that no one has context of it other than, oh,
Yeah,
look,
like
it looks
completely
pretty.
transformed out of context. Yes. Yeah, which I think there's a I don't know, I think there is a point to that, like we've been talking about, of like
It's like a depiction of the struggles of all these lower class kids struggling to make a living. It's just being usurped as a thing for
it's
rich people
beautiful. We can use
to
it to make
drink
money.
tea next
Yeah,
to.
exactly.
Yeah.
We see the like the art that was so alive and was so relevant in these kids' lives. It's now put under lock and key. It's very much like a butterfly that's been pinned to a wall. It's still beautiful, but there's no longer the life or anything to it. There's no context to it. It's just placed there for to be decoration. It's art that's become decoration.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would 100% agree with you. I liked the book enough that an extra chapter would not have gone amiss for me. But that's not to say that it's not still, the ending is still good for what it is. But I definitely agree. And that's more out of a desire for more Graffiti's Wall than
I
less.
was gonna say,
Sure.
I think like the creative team would love to hear that criticism, right? Like I wanted more of it. That's the worst thing he has to say. That yeah, your book
Yeah.
succeeded. For me, like the only thing other than we kind of talked about how I semi-similarly felt like we were missing a Syra chapter, like a Syra focused chapter. At times the line work broke down a little bit for me and got too loose, like in certain scenes. Like
Sure.
I wrote down like an example of like in the scene where the cop like shakes Jay down for drugs after he leaves the hotel, like the cops like one of the cops' legs is like the size of a tree trunk and the other one's like a normal leg size. Like and none of it's jarring enough to take you out of the story, but it's just like I don't know. Part of it's just my personal preferences like for less looseness versus more looseness. Like I prefer tighter lines, I guess, and I think this book is loose on purpose in a lot of places, but there are places where it just like doesn't quite doesn't quite hang with like we're capturing an energy and it goes into like, oh, it's just loose. Like so that's a very minor criticism. I actually had like I was looking at the section of the notes where it's like, what are some of the comics low points? And I was like, I'm gonna sit at this until I have at least a couple things to say. And that's about all I had is those two things.
Sure.
I think it's very valid about the art. I think that's a very valid criticism because I think as much as it is beautiful, there are panels where almost becomes confusing. And I think that's probably not the intent of the artist. I think, and that I think that's justified to sort of say that that didn't sit right with you, because the art, the kinetic nature of the art, is there to service the story and to sort of make it feel like we're seeing it happen. But if it becomes too loose, it actually undercuts that, doesn't it? It actually makes it harder to understand what we're seeing, and that's yeah, I think that's a very valid point, especially the particular panel that you picked out. I was looking at that, and I think you're right.
I mean, it's also not a, an important panel, right? Like if you're going to invest your time in doing detail, the scene of where he's exiting the hotel isn't a big one, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like I agree.
Because yeah, that's just like the hotel attendant guy outside. It's got some wonky pants or something going on.
Yeah. Yeah, again, like a very minor criticism of a book that I think overall the art is doing a lot, and like a lot of different artists doing a lot to
Mhm.
complement each other too. So
Mm, definitely. Yeah, I think for what felt like a very small book in terms of the length, it had a lot to say, and it said it very well. I think it was very confident in the message that it wanted to convey. And I think that that is definitely worthy of applause. I think the entire team brought their A game. I think the last book that we've read that had this kind of confidence potentially in what it was trying to convey and what it was saying was probably Die.
Mm.
Just in terms of that was a great marriage of writing, art, uh, ink, lettering. All of it worked.
Yeah, I would compare this to, I mean, ping pong, right? And I would say this was on the
yeah,
same level.
yeah, at least close.
Some people like ping pong more than others. That's okay.
I mean, I don't know. Again, we had this discussion when we did the ranking, apples and oranges a little bit, but um, I think they're like this book definitely does a lot with a very like short amount of space that it's using, right? Like it's not a thick book. It's like roughly it's probably smaller than a normal trade collection. Like it's probably smaller
Sure.
than like a six single issue collection, and like it does so much with like so little space. And a lot of that's down to just like how compressed the both like the writing and the page layouts are. Like the story gets a lot done very quickly without seeming like it's just like rushing you along. Like it does it in a very methodical way,
Mhm.
which is very cool.
Do we think that the potentially abridged nature of the narrative was perhaps a consequence of publishers being like, well, we don't think that this will sell because it's telling a story that we're not necessarily familiar with for the audience that we normally cater to?
I don't know. Was trying to track down more information about like the original publication because like this edition's published through Dark Horse, who picked it up in I think 2020, and the first edition of it is actually published through a different publisher that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but it's in like 2018. So I'm not even sure how Dark Horse ended up picking it up to publish it too. So possibly. Unverified. I'll see if I can
What,
track down more
yeah,
information on that for the show notes because I tried to dig into that a little bit and I couldn't find anything that was like concrete at all.
we won't sharpen the pitchforks just yet
No.
Mhm.
No need to cancel anyone just yet, Jono.
then. That is an interesting question though for the I guess they talk about the where our characters ended up, and I guess the world that they inhabit now will be much closer to ours, and how that would potentially change their perspective and the politics of the time and things like that. Because I think Indian politics has undergone a bit of a transformation in recent years and is perhaps a lot more conservative now. And the impact that that would have on the kind of stories that it would be telling would be very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and there's some of that too in Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which, surprise, surprise, is probably my recommendation for if you liked this, you should read another book. Also by Ram V. Different artist. I think, oh, I don't remember if it's the same letterer. It probably is not. No, it probably is. It probably is the same letterer. Like very similar colors. Art is like close, not the same. Um, but like it's a story of basically believe like kind of not quite, but like the Hindu version of death is sent to Earth because there's no need for death anymore because soon a human is going to invent immortality, and so she is like going on a mission to kill the human who's going to invent immortality, but then hijinks ensue. Very contemplative in the same way that this book is kind of contemplative. Like, it's very Sandman-y, which I think is
Mm.
by design. Like, this is one, Pat, that I've almost made us read for the podcast like 4 or 5 times. We will probably eventually read it for the podcast.
This is The Many
It's very
Deaths of
good.
Layla Starr.
Many
Is what
Deaths
you're
of
talking
Layla
about?
Starr, yeah. Is
Cool.
very good. So if you like this, you should read that one. Also set in Mumbai.
No,
We're doing
fantastic.
recommendations now, I guess.
I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Smash cut too.
I bet you're wondering how we got here.
I think I had a hard time trying to think of a good recommendation for this. I didn't want to say Slumdog Millionaire because that just feels trite, feels rote. So I am instead going to say check out the game Thirsty Suitors. It's basically an Asian, South Asian American. I just blanked on Matt. Seven Evil X's is from
Scott
Scott
Pilgrim.
Pilgrim?
Scott Pilgrim. So Scott Pilgrim crossed with South Asian culture. It's about a young woman coming home from college and trying to put her life back together from all of her exes. And it's really fun, QT combat kind of stuff. And it's really great. And it really delves into like the family dynamics of the South Asian, like how important it is to respect your elders and that kind of stuff. And it was really good and really well done. So Thirsty Suitors. I recommend that.
I have that on my to playlist, so that's great. That will probably move it right up to the top.
Yeah.
Don't what you got.
So I've broken mine down into comics, books, and video games. So for comics, graphic novels, really. Day Tripper, I felt, is another one from sort of covers meditate. It's very meditative in a very different way, I guess, on what it means to be alive. Does come at it from the approach of what it means to die as well. Day Tripper is set primarily in Brazil, I believe. Am I correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and that just gives it a slightly different flavor to, I think, of what we see in a lot of graphic novels, which is good. It's probably one of my favorites of all time. So yeah, I think I probably recommend it every single podcast.
I mean, it is that good, so that's fair.
It is very good. Yeah. And then the other one is one that was very popular at our library. Is The Diary of a Teenage Girl: An Account in Words and Pictures, and that is by Phoebe Glockner. And it's I don't know if it's autobiographical, but it must be at least be semi autobiographical. And what does it mean to grow up in America in 1976? And I think even now, probably for you guys, that would not necessarily be an America that you would recognize. And so I think that almost makes it, the past is a foreign country. Is that what they say? So I think that would be a very similar experience, not just for different politics and things like that, but just everything about growing up would be very different. So that would be my two graphic novels. The two books that I picked would be the first would be The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, age 13 and 3/4. That's by Sue Townsend. That's the fictional, sorry, the dog's howling again. That's the fictional diary of a teenager in the UK in the early 80s. And again, I think it doesn't seem that long ago, but I think the experience that you would see in that book would be so different to what you're used to, that it would be almost unrecognizable. And then the other one is again another fictional diary. It's called Spud, by John Vanderroot, and that is the diary of a young South African boy attending private school in the 1990s, and that's quite good. In again in the way that it sort of shows you a world that you wouldn't necessarily otherwise see. And Pat, in a similar way, for video game recommendations, I would recommend the Persona series. I think
Mm,
specifically Persona 4, because I think that best captures that feeling of that time running out of the summer, of that intense gravity that draws friends together, and the ennui that can permeate life when you're young. That feeling of something. Yeah, yeah. Just
sure.
I think that's great, and has a great soundtrack. So yeah, those would be my 5 recommendations. But obviously, um, all of very different approaches to how Graffiti's Wall tackles the particular story,
Yeah,
coming of age.
I did look up some of those books.
Yeah, oh, yeah, definitely. Sue Townsend's Secret Diary of Adrian Mole series is quite interesting for how she wrote it parallel sort of British life at the time. So it goes from, to from when he's quite a young teenager to when he's a middle-aged adult with prostate cancer. And it is a humorous book all throughout.
Well, it sounds interesting, sir.
And Matt, I think we got one recommendation for you. Were there any others?
I only stick to one. No, I mean I did. It's been so long since I've watched this movie that I don't know that I can recommend it, but like something about this movie made me feel like I need to rewatch the movie City of God, which is, gosh, I
Ooh.
left myself a link here in my
Yeah,
notes so that I could actually like um
Ah, that's a really good point, though, because there was another film that I was also considering. But please
suburb
carry on.
of Rio
Yeah.
de Janeiro. Set in like a suburb of Rio de Janeiro, and I remember that movie doing a similar, like giving me similar feelings to this book, whereas like you feel like you're really in the place where the movie is taking place, and it
hmm,
follows like um I believe teenagers who eventually are like growing up, and like one of them becomes sort of the like kingpin of the gangs in, oh, I can't remember the name of the Cidade do suburb of Rio de Janeiro is what it says here on the Wikipedia page. I'm sure I butchered that too. Um, but yeah, I like it's been so long since I actually watched it, but I feel like that movie gave me sort of the same feeling for some of the same reasons.
sure.
So,
Mm-hmm. The film that I had meant to recommend, I didn't write it in my notes, but that is Boy by Taika Waititi. I think it was one of his first films.
I think that's
Really,
one
really
of
good.
the Taika ones I
Very
haven't seen.
bittersweet. Yeah, very, very, very bittersweet. But in a very similar way, that coming of age story about realizing that the people that we look up to are not necessarily worthy of our respect. Um, but at the same time, about yeah. Anyway, I really recommend it. Yeah.
Well, all right, guys. I think that will do it for this month's discussion of graffiti as well. As always, if you want to get in touch with Pat or myself, you can email us at waitingonthetrade@gmail.com. You can also find more comics related goodness at mattreadscomics.com. Jono, thank you so much for coming on and talk about this book with us. I had a lovely time. I'm really glad that we get to continue having these conversations.
Uh, Honestly, the pleasure is always mine, and I really do love coming on. And the plug that I gave at the beginning, let me reiterate: if you've ever been asked and you've been too afraid to do it, please know that they will. Matt and Pat both will make you feel it's the easiest thing in the world.